Hi everyone. Today is the anniversary of January 6th, 2021, which when I think of it, when it happened the day of, and when I think of it, it feels very much the same as 9/11. And I've always associated the two, same feeling, same type of event, same attack on our country, but it was an inside enemy, if you will. And I guess, and even like making a video like this reminds me of the videos I've made of 9/11, how I remembered every detail of that day and the feelings, and watching it on TV. It's so much the same now. You can say, well, in 9/11, a whole bunch of people died. That's true. But you know what was different about, and that's true, and it's sad, and I cried. We all cried. It was awful. That day was awful. But what was different about that day and Jan 6 is that we actually created laws against the enemy harming our country, stealing our democracy, ruining our government institutions, our buildings, our freedom, our constitutional law. I mean, 9/11 was to stop our freedom as Americans, and you can't tell me that Jan 6 wasn't the same thing. Only with Jan 6, we let them back in the White House. We had a chance and we didn't do it. I really feel like Jan 6 and 9/11 were the same event, only we're still actually going through the coup. It never ended. So anyway, I'm going to talk about my feelings on the day. And yeah, I mean, first of all, the world had changed via the 2020 the virus and the shutdowns. That had changed all of us drastically. The summer of 2020 was a crazy summer with videos of people fighting over who should wear a mask, and violations of having, and riots, and people being thrown in vans, kind of like we're still seeing, but us fighting for democracy. And it was like there was a clear line. The virus and the masks had created a clear line of Republicans and Democrats, or I would actually just say MAGA and regular folk, non-cult folk. And yes, that's how I see it. That's how I've always felt about it. I'm sorry. Okay, so Jan 6. Days before January 6th, 45 had made clear that he was not going to leave the White House. And sometimes he would say, oh, of course I'm going to go. Of course I'm going to accept the results. I remember somebody asking him, like CNN asking him, will you accept? Because they were trying to make him lock it in and say, will you finally accept the results of the election? Of course I do. Of course. What are you trying to say? You stupid Democrats, fake news, fake news. And I was like, well, I didn't really hear him say that he would actually ever leave and accept the results. And I got this really uneasy feeling that he was never actually going to leave. And they'd been showing him stealing documents with boxes being taken out of the White House. And it was just a lot of feeling underway of, he's just not going to leave quietly. He's not going to. And so the days leading up to Jan 6, he started to talk of having another one of his crazy rallies, which we always knew there was always something violent in the air with his rallies. And so when he said he was going to bring them to the Capitol the day of the counting of the electoral votes, I thought, that's not good. He's up to something. And they should not allow him to have a rally that day. The day before, fine. The day after, fine. But not the day of the counting of the electoral votes. And of course, that weekend, the weekend before Jan 6th, go look up the news, on that weekend, that phone call came out where he tried to pressure Raffensperger from Georgia and say, all I want you to do is give me 11,180 votes, because that would have been enough to overturn. And at that time, he had people in various places creating, as we know now, creating fake electors. We know that now, and I just saw 444. Okay, so it was like maybe January 4th, so maybe it was a Sunday or Monday. I saw footage of, and he was drumming up his MAGA, footage of MAGA
and there was a line of cops. Maybe it was in Washington, D.C. as people started to arrive days before January 6th. I don't know, but it was and they were mad. MAGA was mad because 45 had told them the lie that the election had been stolen, that Biden hadn't won, which Biden had. Biden won that election in 2020. But 45 had been drumming this lie into their heads that he had been robbed, that they had been robbed, and that it was an attack, and they could not let it go, that they would have to fight for him. And they were angry. And I remember seeing a video of MAGA fighting a line of cops, back the blue, right? That's the first time when I was like, back the blue, sure, right. Now we're seeing them beat up cops because they won't accept the election. Because anytime someone said Biden won, MAGA got rabid. And then 45 would go onto Twitter and he would write in all caps, MAGA. And I began to realize that whenever he did that, that was a brainwashing thing, a hypnotist trick to bring out the rabid dog in his followers and his cult. And I just saw 606, to make them be unhinged and do crazy things for him, even murder. Is that my phone, or what is that? Is that the TV? Huh, I just heard something weird. That was strange. What am I hearing? I'm hearing like weird sounds. That's strange. Okay. Anyway, that was a couple days before. Already starting to see MAGA beat up cops. And I was like, that's not good. And I remember I was in the kitchen, literally. It was Sunday, January 4th or January 3rd, 2021. And I turned to my daughter and I said, I guess Trump's going to, he's having his followers come to the Capitol on the day they're going to count the votes, and you just know something bad's going to happen. And I remember I said to her, at least two people, when I said there will be guns, there will be violence, and at least two people will get shot and one person is going to die. That's exactly what I said to her. I've never forgotten that I said that verbatim. I said those words to her. And then, okay, so Jan 6th, so holidays are over, there's snow on the ground, my kids go back to school, first day of school, January 6th, my kids go back to school after winter break, and I've got that feeling of relief, but also sadness, my kid, Christmas is over, all that, and it's sad. But I go to the store because I need cleaning supplies and groceries, because the winter break's over, and I want to get stuff done. They're back in school, I want to get stuff done. So I go to the store, driving back home on the highway, turning into where I live, and on the radio they play Lawyers, Guns, and Money, and I believe that's by Warren Zevon, I think, or Marshall Crenshaw. I always get them confused. Anyway, Lawyers, Guns, and Money, and I thought, that means something. That means something. So go home, turn on the TV as I'm putting stuff away, and they're showing Nancy Pelosi, and they're proceeding to do the whole thing live on TV, CNN. House in session to count electoral votes. Will Pence certify? And then a split screen, 45 and his rally, and he's getting them really mad and having a speech. And then they cut to Mike Pence, and Mike Pence says, I'm certifying the election. And then the cut to 45, and 45 says something, did you guys hear that? Pence said he would certify the election. We were robbed, and I can't believe he would do that, and whatever else he said, all that type of outrage, false outrage. And then the fight like hell, and you go over there and fight like hell, that talk. And I remember thinking, God, he's just gonna get them so angry that they're likely to kill Pence. He's gotten them so angry that they're likely to kill Mike Pence. And Mike Pence is doing the right thing because you have to certify the election results. Anyway, and then the cut to Nancy Pelosi, okay, and then Mike Pence, and then Pelosi comes back and she says, okay, start to begin, and they'd have Texas and Ted Cruz, and she says, Ted Cruz, do you accept or contest the results of the election from Texas? And he says, I contest it. And she says, delay in counting while the, whatever from Texas, the congressman from Texas debates whether or not they can have their electoral votes, something like that. Delay in counting. And I thought, MFer, this is on purpose. This is on purpose because it's delaying everything. Let's just get this done. Get it, because we were scared. They were scared of 45 ruining the election results. We knew he wasn't going to leave. We knew this. And so when Ted Cruz did that, I knew that was part of this whole process, that it was planned. So I believe now that that was done on purpose by Ted Cruz to delay the counting while the angry mob came over and started their chaos. So here they come. They're all pissed off. They're carrying their Trump flags and the American flag, and they're angry. And they start hitting security guards, and they're hitting at walls. They're scaling the walls like they're zombies. It's like watching a zombie movie. It's like watching spiders in a horror movie, scaling walls. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to break in the building. They're going to kill people. It was like watching 9/11. It really was. For all good intentions, January 6th was 9/11 part 2. And I just saw 11/11. So, then they start breaking through the windows. Now, I'll never forget this. All these crazy people around, and I saw these birds, like doves and pigeons, dive bombing the rioters. And I thought, oh, that's like angelic forces trying to stop them. That's what I thought in my spiritual brain, and I still believe that to this day. The birds were there trying to stop them. And then someone had hung a Jesus flag, like this huge flag that's a Jesus, on a balcony. And I'm not like super religious, but I'm super spiritual. And I remember thinking, Jesus is protecting the scene. And so then they have the whole thing where Babbitt gets shot because she's breaking into the building, and they told her to stop over and over again, and she wouldn't listen, like a zombie, a cult zombie member. She wouldn't listen, and she ends up getting shot, which is a tragedy, but she would not stop when they told her. And people inside the building had to be protected. They were going to get killed. They were seconds away from being killed by this mob. And so, and then they get in, and we know what happens. And then there's scenes of them like sitting in Nancy Pelosi's chair and the chambers and the bullhorns that they found, or whatever, the guy, and defecation on the walls, and the chaos. And okay, so here's the thing. All of us on Twitter all day, Trump has to stop this. He has to call it off. Where is Trump? Why won't Trump stop this? Why won't Trump tell them to stop? Trump has to tell them to stop. Calls all over Twitter, suspend Trump from Twitter, ban him from Twitter, and he has to stop this insurrection. He has to. All day, nothing. He won't do anything. He won't stop it. He won't stop it. Finally, late in the day, the sun is down, it's dark. He finally makes a video. I remember he's wearing his overcoat, and he made a video, and he was like, well, everybody, I guess you gotta go home. And you had a good effort. You are good people, but you gotta go home. And it wasn't until later that I realized a few things. They're very clear to me. One, he wanted Mike Pence to be killed for entertainment purpose only. After Mike Pence said he would not Mike Pence said that he would certify, that he wouldn't do what Trump wanted, but he would certify the election. I believe that 45 wanted him to be killed. And part of that was because maybe Pence had the electoral votes. And there was this point where apparently 45 and Bannon and others were calling around to see where Pence was, where his location was. And one particular call that they said went through, and it was, I can't remember what they said, but they had to put Pence in a car, and they almost put him in a car with one of Trump's people, and Pence would have died. They were hunting him down and were going to kill him as revenge, and also to get those electoral votes. The other thing that I know now, that the whole insurrection wasn't to take over the government, because Trump was still president. It's like the king wanted his head, remove their head. He wanted his head. He was king. He was president already. It wasn't to take over the government. It was to create so much chaos to distract everyone, while a surreptitious brain group, like 5 people or such with their laptops and phones, searched for the real electors that they were going to replace with false electors, and then they would have stolen the election. And that's why Trump did not call off the rioters all day, because he was waiting to see if someone had carried out the plan of finding the real electors that they were going to replace with false electors. That's why it took him all day. He planned it, he watched it, it was his work. That's why he didn't want to call it off, because it was his work. He had planned it all. This is his work. And of course he wasn't going to call it off. And it wasn't until he absolutely knew that no one could find those real electors, because Nancy Pelosi was smart. She was smart. She hid those things. She hid them. She was a smart woman. And she also knew this. Now listen, so even after he finally called everyone off, and the security guards and National Guard finally got to come in and told everyone to go home, 45 was going to have his people go in there and still get the real electors and replace them with false electors. They had a plan. They said they tried. But Nancy Pelosi knew this, and that's why she called them back, the Congress and everyone in the House, back into session to certify the electoral votes. And had she not done that, the night of January 6th into the morning of January 7th, 45 would have stolen the election and the electoral votes and replaced them with false electors, and he would have claimed a second term, and we'd be going through what we're going through right now, which is going to be a separate video if YouTube lets me post it. But that is the real account. You see, the White House now, the fake White House now, is posting things about how it was peaceful protesters and blah, 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 blah. No, we watched it on live TV, and I was able to say days before that it was going to be violent, and I knew exactly what they were up to. I knew what Trump was up to, and I knew it was going to be violent, and I knew exactly what it was, and we all watched it on TV, and they should show it live on TV every year, because apparently the gaslighting and the propaganda is still messing with people. But I saw it live on TV, and I knew it, and it was 9/11. January 6th was 9/11, and the only difference is with 9/11, we got rid of the bombs, and we made rules on airplanes, and we went to war with Afghanistan, and we finally ended up getting Osama bin Laden. But with 1/6, with January 6th, we let him back on the ballot, and he got back in the White House. So we're still dealing with our 9/11, which is disgusting and horrible. And look at the trouble that's happening now with this insurrectionist in office and his people. So that's the real Jan 6, not the fake version, not the lies that are being spread today by propaganda, by insurrectionists, because we're still in the coup. We're still in the coup. It never ended. Sometimes I wonder if he had gotten his way back in and stolen his way back in, and his term had been over last year, we'd be done with it. But I don't know. Who knows? And sometimes I'm bitter that we were allowed to have Biden for 4 years, only to end up back in this horrible situation, which is worse, way worse. I don't know. Back then, 45 didn't have immunity, so it probably would have been better to let him, whatever. But here we are. Stay hopeful. Emperor Spirit said, stay hopeful. What did they say? Have hope. That's what they told me last year. Have hope. So we're going to get through this. But that is the real events of January 6th. Don't let anyone lie to you. That's exactly what happened. And the fact that I could predict almost everything that happened that day, and it happened just as I said. It was an insurrection, and it was violent, and it was not Antifa, it was MAGA. Thanks for watching. Bye.